And joining me now is the former mayor of New York City, Michael Bloomberg. He's the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for Climate Action and the co-author of Climate of Hope. Mayor Bloomberg, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Sure. Thank you very much.
So let's start with, I just want your takeaway on the Yellow Vest movement in Paris. What went wrong in how France implemented what they did? What lessons are you taking away from what you've seen so far?
Well, what you have there is people who were asked to do something and didn't understand what they were going to get out of it. You can take Jerry Brown, who stood up for a gasoline tax. Some people didn't like it, but he got it through because people understood there was a problem. They didn't have the infrastructure they needed. They needed to raise the revenue, and they went and took that and taxed themselves because there was a value to them. And I think the big problem that we have right now is we have a climate change problem. The world is getting hotter. There are bigger storms than ever before. There are droughts where we used to have floods and vice versa. Our water is getting less, and we've got to do something about it. And so we have this great challenge, and we have an opportunity. The challenge is what we do about it, and the opportunity is the value of what we do. And that gets back to the same thing you were talking about in Paris. Right. If we go and we create a better environment so that the Earth stops getting hotter, if we go and we reduce our dependence on coal and we invest money in infrastructure, right, we can turn this around. And so I've devoted my life to doing some things that I think will make a difference. Number one, put hundreds of millions of dollars of my own money into trying to fix climate change, reduce the things that are making this planet hotter. I have spent a lot of time. We created something called Beyond Coal with the Sierra Club. We've closed, Chuck, over half of all the coal-fired power plants in this country. And we've done 15% of the European power plants. We just started there.
Okay, but let me stop you there. So you've closed the power plants. I say this because this is where the politics gets very difficult. What about, what happened to those people?
Okay. When we closed the coal-fired power plants, there were some people who lost their jobs. And I started something supporting retraining for coal miners. And I've been out arguing for a massive plan to invest in infrastructure, particularly in the states that have become dependent on coal. You know, it's not just coal miners that are getting hurt. It's all the people in those states who've been promised that coal would be the salvation for the future of their economy. And what's happened is the coal miners have come down with black lung disease, the education system and the infrastructure in these states, they don't have any money to do anything to make it any better. And we've got to understand that we have to help the coal miners. But having said that, the coal miners are out of work not because of the environmental movement. The coal miners are out of work because of the technology that has replaced them.
And the thing is that the facts haven't... I want to play for... Hillary Clinton made this same argument on the campaign trail, and it got thrown in her face. Let me play the infamous clip for you, and we'll talk about it.
I'm the only candidate which has a policy about how to bring economic opportunity using clean, renewable energy as the key into coal country. Because we're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business.
Obviously, it was that last line that got used.
The coal miners are already out of work. And the coal users are going away from coal. The economics of generating electricity with renewables and natural gas is dramatically better than the economics of using coal. So when Trump says he's going to bring back coal jobs, just want to tell me how that worked out? I haven't heard him say that since he got elected, because that's not the issue. The issue is you've got to go, and we have to retrain these people. We have to invest in infrastructure. We have to find other jobs. But the coal industry is gone. And the trouble, what people read into Hillary's thing was she made a statement, had outlined a problem, but didn't come up with a solution. I have spent my adult life in creating jobs. I know something about creating jobs. I did it 12 years in City Hall. I've done it 30 years in my company. And you can build something for the future. You can retrain people. It's just you have to have a concrete plan. And if
you have to but it doesn't it's more than that. And I say this because I've seen these plans before, and some of these coal You know, it's amazing to me. They don't even know that there's a retrain. Some of them do know there's retraining available to them, that they don't want to take it. How do you connect culturally? It seems that for some reason this has gotten flipped on them, and it's become like you're going after their way of life, not just helping them get a new job.
All right, look, I was mayor of New York City, very diverse city, for 12 years. And I spent a lot of time in neighborhoods where I had to learn what their experiences were, learn what their fears were, understand what resources they have, look into their history and say, okay, I can craft something that you can understand, that you can participate in, that uses what you bring to the party. Some people have an education, some people have strength, some people have a desire to work hard, some people have a desire to help other people. If you can relate to the people and understand their problems, then you can help them. Without that, you can't do it.
I want to get you to react to something. You know, we picked a state randomly out of the hat to find people on the street to ask questions to you. So what did we choose? Iowa. I have kid. But this is Mo Cason. Some barbecue fanatics will know who he is. But in an interesting observation about various climate change proposals. Take a listen.
I don't care how good the idea is. I always feel that in the end, someone or some organization is going to benefit financially from it. And the person that is getting it hit at the end, or the person who didn't even craft it, didn't even design it. And, you know, it's your truck drivers, it's the, you know, your farmers or people out on the road that are trying to make a living.
This, to me, goes back to Yellow Vest, right? It is, when you talk to them, some of these Yellow Vest protesters are very much environmentalists. They're just sitting there going, I can't afford this. How am I don't live in Paris. I don't have the same access to public transportation. How do you solve that?
We have to find a ways, this guy just had on television. He says somebody else is going to make money. We want to make sure that he is one of the beneficiaries. So what I've been doing is spending my own money helping to train him and lots of other people like that, and they are the ones that I've got to make sure wind up with the skills to take advantage of the new jobs. Technology's changing. The world is going to change. You can't stop that no matter what. Coal is going away because the economics of coal is so bad. But there's somebody who needs a job. He doesn't have the right skills, or he's not in the right place at the right time, or nobody's bothered to try to connect him and a company that needs him. Yeah. Those are the kinds of things we've got to do. And all we do, Chuck, is we have rallies, we give speeches, we talk about coal, right, and then nobody does coal. And coal's not the only industry that is going through a transformation.
Let's talk about the issue of a carbon tax. There's some that believe it is the only. If you don't price carbon, we're not going to ever get out of this. But as Jeff Merkley, who is a senator from Oregon, rather progressive senator for Oregon, as he pointed out, if Washington State, a very progressive state, couldn't pass a carbon tax via referendum, that idea may have to be shelved for a while. Where are you on the carbon tax?
Well, it depends how you structure the carbon tax. But I'll give you a good example of a tax that did work. Jerry Brown, who really is one of the heroes of the climate movement, he passed a gasoline tax, and they tried to repeal it, and he managed to win the repeal battle as well. If you explain to people why, people want recognition and respect. Mm-hmm. And too many people think, I know what's right for you, and don't bother me with the details. Just let me do it. That is why you had people in Paris in yellow jackets. Mm-hmm. That's why you have people here who voted for Donald Trump, I would argue, is exactly that. Mm-hmm. That's what Brexit is all about, Macron's all about. Right. People are saying, I don't want to be told what to do. I think that you can show somebody what's available and convince them to want it. And that's what nobody's done with the guy who just said somebody else is going to get rich. He can be one of the beneficiaries. He does, and incidentally, if companies don't make money, they're not going to create jobs. So you want them to be able to make money. But we have to match the skill sets with the needs.
I get that. What's the transition look like? Is this dividends? Is this? I think you were a part of a group that was open to the idea you take the carbon tax, and it's a dividends to people that maybe can't afford to be.
The whole idea of carbon tax is you still have some carbon, but you move it around to who has the best use of it.
But if fuel prices go up, do you subsidize working class people?
Well, it depends. Take a look. I keep coming back to the gasoline tax because people can, I think, understand.
Right, it's easy to grasp.
What's happening to us is our roads are falling apart, and the tax revenues that we use to fix our roads are from gasoline taxes. The trouble is, people are going to electric cars. So there is no tax revenue coming in, or there's less tax revenue coming in. We've got to find different ways to raise the money, and taxes are the ways we do it. But you've got to understand, as the world changes, we've got to change. And that's what we're afraid to do in this country.
Is there a chance that you can accelerate innovating our way out of the problem in this respect? The electric car issue. And I think and many people wonder, okay, if you invested more in that and we created the electric pickup truck, okay, that actually felt like you could have a real pickup truck.
They're starting to make them.
Then does the carbon tax thing become less of an issue for the average person? Is this still going to end up being something on the corporate level?
Well, I don't think most people would see the carbon tax. It's really more between companies, and they don't understand. All they know is when they buy a product, is it a good product, and is it an affordable price, and is there service with it, and those kinds of things. But the effect of a carbon tax is to spread around the liability. And for those that really need to do something, they will pay more. And for those that don't, they will pay less. But it's just one. You should have a green plan. You should have a gas tax. There's lots of different ways to approach it. One of the things that I've kept done is with Jerry Brown, we created something to replace when Trump pulled out of the Paris Plan. Right. We created something else, a competition among cities. I was just in yesterday in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. They won one of 20 prizes, $2.5 million from my foundation, because they've come up with good ideas to improve the environment, but also to work on jobs and the infrastructure. And these things aren't separate things. We have an enormous opportunity. At the same time, we have this big problem. If we don't do something about climate change, we're in big trouble. We have forest fires and all that sort of stuff we talked about. But also, by having something that will really fix it, big infrastructure, for example, we have a chance to create an awful lot of jobs for a lot of people in this country, real good jobs that are paying good wages.
What would be the impact if we rejoined Paris today, the Paris Agreement?
Not a lot, because we are halfway there towards meeting our goals already. Somebody said, oh, you're never going to get this. It's ridiculous to think that America is going to meet its goals. We're halfway there already, and there's 7 years left to go. The economics of coal mean nobody's going to stop the reduction in the amount of coal. We have gone and done a whole bunch of things that we had promised to do under that agreement that Trump said we're not going to do. He walked away. So we decided, we in the private sector.
But he hasn't fully walked away, has he? I mean, we did have representatives in Poland.
He can't pull out until 2020. Right. That's the deal, okay? Right. But, for example, he stopped. America owed some money to help pay for the management of these programs. He walked away from it. In the end, he did some of it, or the federal government did some, and I think my foundation gave him $5 million to pay what our obligation is. So he didn't walk away from it because he didn't have a lot to do with it. All of the things that have been done, or most of them, have been done by the private sector, individuals and companies.
Is that the real answer? Should he give up on government?
No, government, it would be a lot more helpful if we had a climate champion rather than a climate denier in the White House. I've always thought Trump has a right to his opinions, but doesn't have a right to his own facts. And the truth of the matter is this country and this world is in trouble. The ice caps are melting and the storms are getting greater. In South Carolina about a month ago, they had 3 feet of rain. Do you know how high 3 feet is from Florida here?
Why do you think people, why do you think people want to deny climate change?
Well, number one, people don't.
You think that's a phony argument when they say they deny it?
No, some people do.
Okay.
But we did a lot of polling. I supported 24 congressional candidates, 21 won, and we did lots of polling as we were creating ads for them. One of the things we polled was climate change. 75% said they believed in climate change. If you go to, you mentioned Iowa. Iowa now generates 1/3 of its entire energy from wind. They, in a few years, will be 100%. There's a town, Georgetown, Texas, with a Republican mayor, 100% renewables. So there are people that are doing things, there are places that are doing things, and people believe. You look out your window and you see forest fires, and maybe it's going to hit your house. You become a believer pretty quickly.
All right, let's talk about how a presidential campaign and a sort of a presidential focus. There's some people that say climate change is a policy paper you put out, and there's others that say every proposal that you do now in Washington has to be through the lens of dealing with climate change? Whether it's your economic plan, where are you on that?
I think that any candidate for federal office better darn well have a plan to deal with a problem that the Trump science advisors say could basically end this world. Even his science
But is that fair
advisors,
that at all, if you run for president and if you happen to do it, that all your policy proposals will be through the lens of, is it?
Look, Chuck, the presidency is not an entry-level job, okay?
Right.
We have some real problems. If you don't come in with some real concrete answers, I think the public is tired of listening to the same platitudes that they get. We're in favor of God, mother, and apple pie, and trust me, I'll have a plan when I get there. No. You have to have a plan. And I can tell you one thing. I don't know whether I'm going to run or not, but I will be out there demanding that anybody that's running has a plan. I want to hear the plan, and I want everybody to look at it and say whether it's doable.
I want to ask you about something in Iowa. It has to do with ethanol subsidies.
Yep.
At one time, you were pretty tough, pretty anti-ethanol subsidies. Let me play a clip with my colleague, Andrew Mitchell.
And it just doesn't make any sense unless what you're trying to do is to help the people in Iowa. And I don't, that may very well be a good idea, but you can't do it as part of the energy policy. You should be doing it as part of our agricultural policy.
You seemed last week to be a little more open to ethanol.
No, what I said was we want to get away from burning things to give us energy.
Yes, that's what this.
Okay? One of the things you burn is gasoline. And now we also burn ethanol mixed together, okay? It turns out, actually, that the ethanol is less polluting than the gasoline. But we want to get rid of both of them and go to renewables. You want to go to solar, you want to go to wind, you want to go to hydro, you want to go to nuclear. And as part of the transition, we're going to have gasoline for a good long time, and there's no reason to take the ethanol out. It actually makes the combination better. But it's not where you want to be. And down the road, if we get to the all-renewable thing, we won't have gasoline, we won't have ethanol, but we'll have cleaner air.
Curious where you are on where the energy companies and the role they should play in this, because on one hand, they're going to get hit first with the tax. The fear is always they will pass it on to the consumer. But there's another aspect of this that some are pushing for, which is to sue these energy companies, sort of similar to the tobacco companies. Where are you on that?
Look, and we want to buy oil, and particularly as gasoline, but we use it in other forms. There are big companies in that business. There's no law against what they're doing, and if they stop producing what we need, our cars would stop.
So you don't. So should they be held accountable for some of this pollution?
No.
If they knew in advance it was polluting.
As long as they follow the law. The mistake we're making is we let people frack and burn off and let methane into the air rather than, and Trump's been walking away from all of the things that Obama did a lot and other people did a lot to try to make sure the production of energy is as efficient and as clean as it can be. ExxonMobil, Darren Woods, the guy that runs it, big pro-environmentalist guy, runs a big oil company, understand that. They are out there. They were running full-page ads in the papers to tell Trump, stay in COP21. Right. Would they like to have us go away from gasoline and oil? No, but they are working on the next generation. I took a tour of one of their research labs. They're trying to grow plants that will make...
What do you tell the purists on the left who will say, hey, don't trust them at all?
Well, I don't... Look, nobody has a lock on good ideas, so maybe there are some there. But fundamentally, this is a world where you do things in an evolutionary way rather than a revolutionary way. There's an awful lot of infrastructure and people, and you've got to get back to those coal miners and the guy on television. Yeah. You have to bring people along. You have to explain what you want to do. And so those on the far left or the far right, I'm sure they're well-meaning, but it's not very practical, and most of the things that they propose take away from us discussing things in the middle where we really can make a difference and help people. That's
the whole point why we want to do a whole hour, to actually deal with the nuance. Before I let you go, what's your timeline on deciding whether you run or not? And what would be the factor if you didn't?
Timeline is beginning of the year, end of January, into February maybe. There's no rush to do it. Everybody wants to know what you're going to do, and the bottom line is I'm not sure yet. I care about a bunch of issues. I care for my kids. I care for this country that's been so good to me, and I want to see how I can help the best. Right now, my foundation and my company, I give 100% of the company's profits, or my share of them, to the foundation. We support an awful lot of things that we're doing that let us explain to people how to do things and give them options, not telling them what to do. But I think I can make the world a better place in the private sector. Can I make it a better place in the public sector? Maybe. I loved 12 years in City Hall. I think it's fair to say most people liked what we did in City Hall. Do I think I could be a good president? Yes. I'm not the only one that could be a good president. I disagree with our current president on so many things that I don't even know where to start there.
I assume a lot of this has to be, are you trying to figure out if the Democratic Party is going to accept you?
Well, I would certainly run as a Democrat. I'm much closer to their philosophy, although I don't agree with any one party on everything. You would have to run as a Democrat. You would have to get a Democratic nomination. And I think if you go out and you explain to them what you do, keep in mind, I got elected in New York City, an overwhelming Democratic city, an overwhelming minority city. And I got elected 3 times. So I must know something about this.
Michael Bloomberg, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views.
Thanks.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.